The time is now to architect a life of excellence. What will we do? Who will we become? We decide today. This is Learn, Do, Become Radio with April and Eric Perry. Let's move onward and upward together.
Hello and welcome to Learn, Do, Become Radio. I'm April Perry, and Eric and I cannot wait for you to listen to today's episode with Greg McKeown, the author of Essentialism. We're going to talk about how essentializing, getting rid of all of the unnecessary things in our lives and really focusing on the things that really matter, can help us as we are learning, as we are doing things, and as we are becoming the people we most want to be. We hope that by the time you're finished listening to this episode, you will feel an increased sense of focus, you'll have a better perspective, and you'll feel a greater sense of relief that you don't have to do everything right this minute. Now, one of the things I noticed is as I heard Greg teaching these wonderful principles, I wanted to write everything down. So I actually did. I went through and listened to the podcast again and kept very, very detailed notes. I would love for you to be able to receive a copy of these notes, and you can sign up at LearnDoBecome.com/episode 12. So come to our website, sign up there on the show notes page, and we will send you a detailed outline so that while you're listening, you can just enjoy and know that the content, including timestamps and all the things that you'll need, will be sent to you right afterwards. Hope you love the podcast as much as we did, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts. Come share them in the comments on the post. Thanks. So first question, we'll just kind of go ahead and jump right in, Greg. At Learn to Become, we're really focusing on this idea of life architecture, setting up a framework and a design for our whole life. And so I would just love to just talk initially about what structure do you think that every essentialist life should include? Obviously, we don't want to overwhelm ourselves with things to do, but as far as what you do personally or things that you've seen successful people do, what are essentialists doing daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly? What are some routines?
And I'd actually maybe ask you to take that in reverse order, right? Maybe starting with the big picture, that end in mind, and kind of figuring out what the essentialist thinks about maybe on an annual or even further length of time, a larger length of time if you want to start there, but then working from that year back to the quarter or month, and just kind of what are the bigger pieces that fold down into the smaller maybe routines and processes that you use.
Yeah, I love that. Let's do this. That when you think about the question, what is essential? It sounds like a very simple question. It is a simple question, but it's a complex question. And to answer it with any sense of confidence, you have to shift into not what we would normally think of as long-term thinking, but really long-term thinking.
Right.
So let's talk about what long-term thinking is. Okay, so if you're thinking your 10-year goal, that's pretty long-term thinking. If you go to a design class on designing your life, in building the sort of architecture that you would want to live a life that matters, they might go even further. They might say, okay, well, what you really need to do is think about you on your deathbed,
right,
and then design what you would want people to say at your funeral and this sort of thing. And so for the longest time, that was as far as my own design thinking went. It was sort of birth to death, and that was pretty long-term thinking if you think about the totality of your life. But it's not nearly long enough. That's what I've learned. There's a process that I've taken people through at times where we start with your grandparents. What was the legacy of your grandparents to you? What do you know about them? What do you remember about them? What did they teach you? What did they leave you with? What were their strengths? What were their weaknesses? And often people actually don't know very much. I mean, there's a certain amount, but it actually is surprising how little they can identify, which is its own lesson. And then you think about your parents and their legacy to you. Then you think about your life, birth to death, fine, you get that. Long-term thinking, very long-term thinking, where your life goals, what are the let's say 3 to 5 things you really say, I that matters to me by the end of my life, I'd like to do. But you don't stop there. It's really important. You've got to go through it, think about your children, think about your grandchildren, and go to the point of 25 years after you've passed away, and your grandchildren, or if you don't have children, maybe it's people you've influenced, sit in the same chair you're sitting in as you're designing all of this, and they're answering the questions about you now, so that they are the ones saying, okay, well, 25, what did I learn from my grandparents? What were their legacy to me? And you've got to get into that mindset. It's after you. In a sense, it's getting to the point where you realize, which is definitely a true thing, that your life is not about you. And in fact, your contribution, your highest contributions will happen, many, many years after you pass away. And it's that kind of longevity that I think starts to move people.
So it's absolutely about legacy, and it's about influence. It's about not you writing your own eulogy. It's about those children and grandchildren doing the same way we started this exercise, looking back at their grandparents with that. How did you impact the world? And regardless, it sounds like of your personal beliefs about whether it's life after death or not, it doesn't matter. It's how do the lives that come after your life benefit and are affected by you, by what you've done. I love to hear you say that, because some of the resources we offer in life architecture talk about just putting together a 50-year framework about, again, it's more that life-based focus, but it goes so much beyond that. The first place we start then is to think about the people, kind of creating your own personal hall of fame. Who are the people from your past who have influenced you? And then we delve into their attributes. What was it about them? But it's that very same exercise, it sounds like, to identify what influence they had on you, and therefore you become that person and have an influence on others generations away.
Yes, I mean, the spirit of that is exactly right. And I don't mean to sort of just be semantically increasing this, but I think the question is what is your 100-year vision?
Yep.
And of course,
yes,
one could go on endlessly with that. Oh, it's 150 years, Greg. Oh, no, it's 1,000 years. But there's something about breaking the bounds of your own life.
Of your own
recognizing,
mortality. Yep.
Yes, your own mortality. Yes, how, in a sense, how absurdly short it is,
mm-hmm.
and how small our piece of the long-term story is. And yet, at the very same time, it's not a depressing idea. To me, at least, it's not. It is a highly, deeply motivational idea, because it's saying you shape things for a long time. Your choices go on for a long time, and there's nothing you can do to change that. It's not really about whether one makes a difference in life or not. It is just, in what way will you make a difference? That you can't not decide. You can't not choose to have influence. There will be influence. It will go on for a long, long time. And so it's if when you start to have this, and maybe it all sounds very philosophical to people who are listening, but if you start with this kind of a question, what is my 100-year vision? It starts to strip away the nonsense of non-essentialism, which is the enemy of our story. This quick, short-term, last-minute, stressed out, endlessly busy approach to living. You see, the enemy of our story, this non-essentialism, really has at the core the idea that everything's important, that everything is equally important. And so all activity deserves, needs to be addressed, needs to be focused on. But the longer you think about it, the longer term vision, the easier it is to discern that most of this stuff is not important.
Absolutely.
A few things will last for a long time.
Well, it's actually the designed insert in your book was one of the black and white pages that says the non-essentialist thinks almost everything is essential. An essentialist thinks, and I might even edit, knows almost everything is non-essential. Because with that longer view, that immortal view, it also steps back to almost a very short-term one-day approach that, Steve Jobs is attributed as saying, if think about it, if today was the last day of your life, what would you do with it? And that's where I think it connects that far-reaching view back to as I plan out my day and my week, we'll come back to that kind of short-term action type plan. How do you make those decisions? And it factors right into this framework you've offered. And I love how, this connects back to all three of us, love the late Stephen Covey and some of his thinking there, but it really is knowing who you are, what your purpose is, and beginning with that end in mind.
Yeah, so as we're talking about this, I don't want to interrupt you, I want to know, let's take it from the philosophical, and I want to know what that looks like in our lives. We don't have to go through every little piece daily, weekly, monthly, but I would just love to hear, so if I want my life to become more of an essentialist lifestyle, what does that look like on, a day-to-day, month-to-month basis?
Assuming that long-term view, what would that, annual, monthly, or kind of daily, weekly approach look like?
Yeah, so this is what I think people need to do is this. They need to schedule right now. They should pause this podcast, just hold it there, and schedule right now a personal quarterly offsite.
Okay.
One day where they design they take on these big picture questions. What do I really want to contribute? What is my 100-year vision? And it doesn't matter that they'll have rubbish answers to that at the first. I think that's important to embrace, in fact, that we won't have good answers at the beginning. To use Pixar's idea, every idea starts with ugly babies. That's the phrase they use internally.
It's true.
These beautiful movies that we see, and they're pristine and done fantastic. Well, they all start with rather awful scribbles and rather awful ideas. But you have to have the courage to be rubbish if you want to make a journey into anything.
And those babies change shape multiple times over the process.
That's exactly it. And it's the reinvention, and it's the vision of revision. It's just keeping on improving, changing, throwing out, that kind of process. So you schedule your personal quarterly offsite, and maybe you do it for the whole year.
Yeah.
You schedule, okay, here's my day, and I wrote an article somewhere anyway about the personal quarterly offsite, why it matters, and a little bit about how to do it.
And I think you might agree, those, and then you hold those sacred, right? Those 4 dates you put on the calendar, those are big rocks. You do not let those get moved, because that becomes the non-essential, pushing those 4 essentials off your calendar.
Yeah, the temptation is constant to do that, but nobody regrets doing it. I mean, there's a quote I like which says that nobody likes to write, but everyone likes to have written. And I think you can apply that to this, right? Nobody likes to think, but everyone likes to have thought. You don't necessarily want to do this hard long-term thinking, facing your life, facing what matters and what doesn't, especially facing how lost we are. This is my view on this, is that there are really just 2 kinds of people in the world, not to oversimplify or anything, but the first is a group of people who are lost, and the second is the group of people who know they are lost.
Right.
And it's that second group that we want to be in that group. It takes courage to be in that group. So you face it in these personal quarterly offsites. I don't know what the long-term goal is, but if you can come out of a personal quarterly offsite with even a 3x5 card that says, here are like I said before, 3 to 5 things that by the end of my life matter to me, or even past that, as we said, that I want my grandchildren to know about me, to have experienced through me, then you just hold on to that. Yes, you keep coming back to it. You'll be off track 90% of the time. That's fine. Keep coming back. Keep looking at that card. Keep coming back to it, so that in this the world we live in, you aren't allowing other people to determine your life for you. In the way that often happens now.
Absolutely. And then maybe just kind of wrap up this question before we move on. We've talked about this long view. We've talked about these quarterly offsites. Maybe as Greg McKeown, what are a couple of things that you do on the day-to-day or the week-to-week that kind of help keep your mind and your life focused on those essentialist kind of pursuits?
The important thing I've found is to think about essentialism in terms of designing one day that really matters. That everything else is not extraneous to do the very long-term thinking in a personal quarterly offsite. It's not like separate to, but it's informing the most important question, which is what's important now. What do I need to do today? And so the thing that I do, the practice that I do and I recommend to others, is that every day you make the list, the essential 6. Right? Here are the things. As a rule of thumb, I might recommend that people say, okay, here are the 3 important things I'd like to do personally, and here are the 3 important things I'd like to do professionally today. And then you prioritize that list, 1 through 6. Next step is to cross off the bottom 5. And
that's awesome, Greg.
and you take that top item and you say, that's the thing I'm going to focus on until it's done, or until I've done as much as I can do, and then I move on to item 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's not like you eliminate them forever, but you just say, I'm going to do that first thing first. And if you've done the job well, if you've done the thinking well, and over time you will, the longest term thinking will then translate into your daily, your daily essential list
behavior.
That as you do that, you will find that top item is often twice as important as the second item, and the second item is twice as important as the third item. The name for this type of prioritization is a power law, and power laws are consistent with across all sorts of industries and so on. They're not very different than the idea of the 80-20, that some things are so much more important than other things, but it's an extreme form of it, and it is true. So the richest person in the world is twice as rich as the second person. The richest country, twice as rich as the second country, and so on. It's not how we think of it being, and that's true in our prioritization efforts. If you do it right, you're going to slowly find that top item is a lot more valuable than the second item, and because that is true, it justifies the time you take to figure it out and the time it takes to do it. It's worth it because it's so much more valuable than doing 20 things that don't even make it onto the list of 6. And that's the idea.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so one of the things that I know that you do on a consistent basis is write in your journal. And I would love to hear more about this, because journal writing really isn't something that a lot of people do anymore. And a lot of people do, blog or put things out on social media. And in some ways that kind of counts, because you're making a record and you're, being able to put down photos or things like that and share things about your life, which is great. But I'd love to hear more about your journal writing, how you utilize that, when you write, when you review it. How does writing in a journal impact your life?
So, that's just let me count the ways. To me, this is an immensely important part of my life, and it's certainly one of the most satisfying elements. So, I mean, for context, I think I haven't missed a day in keeping a journal now for the last 5 years, and I've barely missed a day in the last 10 or 15 years.
That's amazing, Greg.
Wow. Okay.
And it's, but I don't do it now in the way I used to. But it's a good example of how you just have to start being rubbish, right? Like you when at the beginning, you hardly, when I was young, I was hardly keeping anything in a journal, and then slowly you get better. And then my wife was really good and consistent every day when I got married, and I was like, wow, it can be done. I can do this, and slowly. And then eventually, about 5 years ago, I was like, no, I'm just never going to miss a day. It's just this is important to me. And
I think really quick, an important distinction to listeners is that you don't have to write a ton every day. I mean, there might be some days I'm sure you've written just a sentence or two or a bullet point.
Well, it's an important point you make, because I think that it was borne out to me in my 2 grandfathers who both passed away now, and one of them when he died, I was there putting together his sort of funeral and so on, and I realized that there was almost nothing of his life was left in a clear form. So I knew him and I had the relationship I had with him and so on. So there was impact that continues. But in terms of my comprehension of his life end to end, who he was, what he did, why he did it, there's so little of it that we leave behind. So much of it is captured inside of his mind and inside of his brain. It's a bit like, if you've ever had a computer that gets locked, gets so old that you can't get access to it. It's like it's all in there, but you can't access anything. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think death does, is it leaves so little behind. And then I compare that to my other grandfather who let me have a copy of a journal that he wrote. And the journal has just one sentence written, not even every day, but maybe every 2 or 3 days for 50 years. And I have a copy now of that. That's a very different comparison. And all that it took was one sentence every 2 or 3 days over 50 years. a very quiet, small, micro habit, a micro, that's one sentence. Who can't write one sentence every 3 days? You can.
And I've actually heard some other people's suggestions on just, bullet point journaling, where you're just putting some bullet points down to the key experiences or memories or something you learned, or even just writing it in just simple, a few words at a time, right? Just something very simple, but it gets something on paper to memorialize kind of the day-changing, life-changing experiences that you're passing through.
Yeah, and I'll just say as an aside to this that to me, paper is a really important technology. I'm not a Luddite. I'm not against other forms of technology. Some have such extraordinary capacity, but most of the modern technologies, the new media, the digital decay is really strong. And so, yes, you put things up online and you blog and you do these things, but unless there is a paper version of it somewhere in addition to that, I have no reason to believe that will be around 100 years from now. None. No reason to believe it will be around 10 years from now. It might be.
Right.
Of course, as the internet continues and its longevity continues, maybe it will become more stable and more reliable. And in some ways, it's hard to get rid of things online now. I mean, I get that, but it's also hard to access these things, to pass them on to somebody. And paper has just stood the test of time. So
absolutely. I think in addition to your digital decay argument, there's another reason for it, is that they've done studies, psychological and socio-psychological, about the effects of someone having tangible paper and pen, and the ability that unlocks your creativity, the insights, the ability to step away from the rest of the world bustling around you and just be able to connect with yourself and something more around you to be able to kind of put that on paper. So I think there's a lot of reasons why I love how you said it. Paper is an important technology.
And I think helping us to see it in that way and to realize that it has features and functions that are really unusual within the realm of technology it helps us to see why it's valuable. And exactly what you said, it's what it can't do that is often as valuable as what it can do. It cannot distract me in the way that any other digital technology can and does and is built to do, that anyone can reach me, that anyone can connect with me, that I'm going to, how often have you gone to find something on your calendar, somebody asked you a question, go on there, and then 15 minutes later, you haven't done the thing you went for, but you have checked your email, and you have been to the other websites, and you've done all this other stuff. It is an immensely powerful set of tools, but they're really not good at focus. And so a journal is to me, that paper and pen journal it's a highlight for me. That's where I make my list of 6. That's where at the end of the day, keep a gratitude journal. Everything begins with I'm thankful for. And it's a chance for me to celebrate the progress that I've made and the things I think are important. And over time, of course, what this means, if you can put these together, I go through a journal about every 90 days. So every quarterly offsite, I'm able to sit down, look at this whole journal and say, okay, what's happened?
Absolutely.
And there's 3 questions I'm asking at that point, which is, what has happened? So what? Why does it matter, so to speak? And then now what? What do I now have to do going forward? And I'll be honest, I've not always been as good at doing that. So I've got all these years and years of journaling now, and I haven't done as good a job at accessing the value that's in them. So they sort of are there, and eventually you think you'll go back and use them. But more recently I've done it, and it's been very helpful.
Right. Well, I think that's a great point. I was going to say, actually, I've had kind of a similar situation where I've been journaling for, 8 to 10 years off and on, nowhere near as religiously as you have. But it's important because I think you make an important distinction. A lot of those nuggets are still captured back there. And, unless we pass away tomorrow, there's still time to go back and review those. But for someone listening, if they haven't been doing this, the best time to start journaling is 20 years ago, right? But the second best time is today. So grab that journal and start to write down today and build up that set of information, those insights, because at that 90-day mark, and I love how you pointed that out in the book as well, every 90 days, look back, read over, and I think those 3 questions are powerful. It's a way to focus.
And for the first 90 days, so if you schedule this personal quarterly offsite 90 days from now, for that first 90 days, you counterintuitively make the rule that you're not allowed to write more than 1 sentence a day. So, because of course, on that first day, you say, okay, right, I'm going to write.
10
and
pages.
You do, exactly. And that's what happens. But by day 2, you don't have 10 pages worth of time to write.
Right.
So you don't write anything. And then day 2, of course, now you've got the debt of 2 days of 10 pages not written. And so then people are discouraged, they don't do it. You've got to do less than you feel motivated to do.
Right.
One sentence on one thing you're grateful for, one thing that you think is important that's happened today. And you just capture that. 90 days, now you've got 3 pages worth. It doesn't feel like a lot, but my goodness, now you've got something. And maybe you then step it up. You say, I'm not allowed to write more than 2 sentences. If you can keep yourself small, doing less than you think you're able to, you increase the chance of sustainability. And sustainability has so much greater value than people appreciate, because you've probably heard this idea before, but the idea that we overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in a decade. I mean, the value of a journal after a decade is so huge. So if you've kept 1 sentence, 2 sentences, 3 sentences, by the long play of that is so valuable. Something that you can pass on and increases the chance of people even understanding who you were and what you did past your funeral.
I love it. Okay, Eric, you and I are going to be writing in our journals tonight, right?
You make it sound weird. To everyone listening, that is not a weird thing to do. Like, I think what Greg suggested. Well, actually, I'll just tell a quick story here. We were off on a kind of a getaway with some other families one summer, and April and I were actually sitting down planning some of our activities for that coming week and month. And April journals a little bit more than I do, or she uses her planner.
We've had our planners, our paper planners.
And one of our friend's sons comes by and is like, "What are you guys doing? Writing in your dream journals?" And April just starts cracking up because she's like, "Well, that's kind of what section of my planner I was in right then, looking at my goals and my future." And so it sounds kind of,
It sounds a little funny, but think how
fuzzy,
awesome. This is amazing.
But I think you've talked about that very point. Write less, create the habit. That sustainability is so powerful, because that's where I think people think, oh, I'll just work harder, I'll do more, I'll work faster, and I'll be that much more successful. And the heart of what I think you're saying here is step back. You get to the essential, you're doing less. Even in the principle of a journal, you're writing. And I think the point not to be overlooked is that sentence could be just a sentence of gratitude for the first month. And then maybe you switch to a different type of one sentence. But over that 90 days, when you look back, you will realize a lot more about yourself than maybe you'd ever realized before. You're going to see opportunities and insights that are there because you've done this one simple thing consistently.
Yeah, I'm with you absolutely on this. The idea is to connect the dots of as somebody once said to me, they said, "Oh, Greg," I said, I'm too busy living to think about life."
Yep.
Okay.
And I sort of wanted to make that famous after a while, because I thought that's just exactly what the current culture will encourage us to do. And that's, maybe that's fine to live mindlessly or to live compulsively for a few minutes or an hours or a few days even. But I mean, we don't want to. Do we want to live a decade like that, compulsively for a decade, just pulled in every direction this is why I think it's that kind of noise that leads us to feeling that life is too short. I have been reading, although I feel like it fits into the category of this, this image of your dream journaling moment. But I've been reading Seneca recently, and his fabulous essay called "On the Shortness of Life." And the subtitle of that, which is as good or better than the title, is "Life is Long If You Know How to Use It." It's so readable. Don't let the idea that it's by Seneca, for those that aren't familiar with it, to imagine that this is going to be immensely heavy or confusing or so on. It's the clearest of the writing. It's so clear, and everyone who's listening reads it will enjoy it.
Well, we'll put a link to that up in the show notes, because I'm really interested in reading that one. So I was going to actually just kind of quote, another transcendentalist, saying the unexamined life is not worth living. But it sounds like, what you're getting into with Seneca there would be absolutely worth the time to read it.
Yeah, and his thesis is really that life is not too short if you're using it right, if you're using it wisely. It's only too short if you get consumed in things that are not actually the essential things to do, aren't the things that will last the longest. And of course, here we are talking about these things. I just compare it to the normal life that people are faced with today, is nothing like what we're talking about. For so many people in the developed world, it is, they feel stretched too thin at work or at home. They feel busy but not productive. They feel like their day gets hijacked by other people's agenda all the time. They feel like they haven't got enough done. They're running constantly. And this is, they're saying yes to everyone without really thinking about it and then resenting it a little bit afterwards. And this, I think, is more closely describes the normal reality of people's lives today. So any step towards these other ideas we're talking about is tremendous progress, because it's countercultural, inchstones of progress if they can start turning in the direction of their lives to use Buckminster's idea that we need to become a trim tab, and of course he explains that a trim tab is the small rudder that moves the large rudder that moves the massive ship. That there are small things we can do that if we do them, if we start doing them, these little adjustments, these tiny adjustments towards the things that are most essential, they will shift and tilt the very trajectory of our life for the better.
Okay, you are inspiring. Eric and I are just all smiles over here. This is awesome. I have one more question I'm just dying to ask, and this will just kind of be our closing question. I know that we could probably talk for another hour about this, but I wanted to just kind of get to the heart of it. I want to know how essentialism strengthens a marriage and a family. At Learn, Do, Become, we're all about strengthening families, because 100 years from now, it's the things that we've done online or some of our superficial relationships, people may remember us. Very few of them will probably have told their grandchildren about us. But the influence we have in our own marriages, with our own parents or children or siblings, building strong families, and as an essentialist, I would love to know kind of what's your key advice on this, or your key experience.
Well, we have to begin by asking the question of what is the cost of non-essentialism on marriage and on families, because this is the enemy of our story, and this is where we live today. And this also explains why I came to write the book Essentialism. I remember receiving an email from my boss at the time saying that Friday would be a very bad time for my wife to have a baby. And she was expecting, otherwise that would have been an even odder advice to receive. But Friday was there was a client meeting, and they wanted me to attend. And Friday was, in fact, when my wife went into labor and we're in the hospital. And instead of being totally focused on that clearly most important moment, I felt torn. How can I do both? Or how can I keep everybody happy? And to my shame, I went to the meeting, and afterwards, I remember my boss said, "The client will respect you for the choice you just made." And maybe they did, but the look on their faces did not, as it turns out, evince that sort of confidence. To me, it seemed like even if they had, I had made a fool's bargain, and I had violated what was clearly more important under the auspices of both. You can do both. Just do both. And that's one of the most important non-essentialist traps there. Just do both. And it was where I learned a lesson, I hope, for a lifetime, which is if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. And that's really the idea. The key with this long-term thinking that we're talking about, the key with asking about what is essential, it's all about designing for the long term, so that you can then craft your daily decisions to be in alignment with that, so that it doesn't really become in the end, it's not long-term thinking or short-term thinking. It's just important thinking. It's just doing what matters right now, and to make sure that we don't sort of allow other people through email, through social media, through texting, through just other people's opinions or our perceived sense of their opinions, all of that, which I could summarize as the opinion overload of our lives. It's not information overload anymore. It's opinion overload. And to make sure that our lives aren't being guided by that opinion overload, that we don't look to that noise as our wisdom source. Instead, we have to get much more quiet. We have to listen to our conscience within. We have to create space on our calendar each day to be thinking about this, even if at first it's just a few moments. Literally 30 seconds is so much more than nothing. Eventually, we build out and push out the non-essentials in our lives until our life becomes consumed with those things that matter most. And it can be done. Our lives can be consumed with the things that matter most. And we can turn way down those non-essential voices. We can push them aside. And this is the only path I know of for being able to confidently pursue a life that really matters.
And so I think you've hit some beautiful points in there. I think it has everything to do with being honest with yourself and being able to have honest conversations with a spouse or others that are part of your family circle. Because as you do that, you're going to be able to define, like, with that longer view. Because I think so many people put off doing the things they feel like they know or they should do because, I need to do this. I need to provide for my family. I need to do, a variety of things. But I think what you've just said there is there are ways for people to think deeply and collectively about what is it that's best for our relationship, best for our family, and then to figure out what action plans, what process to follow, even kind of being able to provide for your family. There's a way to do it that's more in harmony with what you feel is at your core.
If given sufficient time, one can do amazing things. We haven't touched on the core of essentialism in practice, which is this. You've got to ask what is essential. There's three things. What is essential? Eliminate what's not. And then you have to create a system for making execution of what matters most as effortless as possible. That's when you've really kind of completed the cycle, is that you're doing what's important without having to think about it deliberately. So, I have an afternoon every week that is now scheduled, but it took a lot of work to get this, where I will go either surfing or some other fun activity with my children. So it's a whole afternoon, and that's I still do that. And so as long as I'm in town, that's an example of this.
But that just totally happened on its own, right? That just came out of the blue,
exactly,
just easily, right?
Exactly.
Because I love it what you've said. You have to design for that, and it takes time. I want to go back to that point just to bring it up again. But you said we overestimate what we can do in a year, but underestimate what we can do in a decade, right? And even by default, we maybe in the same way overestimate the year and underestimate what we can do in a week, because the little efforts, whatever it took, and it was a period of probably many months to years, being able to free up your life and your schedule in a way where that Friday afternoon now becomes an inviolate part of your weekly life.
What it took, and this is the real work of essentialism, is it took undoing the non-essentialism, and that's really important. I mean, for us, it was my wife and I working out, okay, what is on the schedule currently, and how do we move the things that we still want to do to other places? How do we deconstruct the non-essentialism? That's the hard work. That's 90% of the hard work. And so then the easy part of the work, really, relatively, is, okay, buy the surfboards, make sure that they have a checklist for everything that needs to go with you, know when you're picking them up, put it on the calendar so that it can't be scheduled for other things. I mean, those things actually aren't that much work. They take work, but they're not very much work. That's just the new stuff. That's, as I say, the easy part. Undoing the old system is all the scar tissue and complexity that has unintentionally forced its way into our schedule. That's what we have to remove, and this idea of effortless execution. There's one more example I would give about that when it comes to family is if I remember the name of it, the Miracle Music Game. I think that's the name of it. This is I use this normally as a metaphor, but it's also literal. This is somebody else's product. I have nothing to do with the product other than I use it. We use it, And it so captures the idea of this difference between effortless execution and forcing execution, right? So you just think about the nighttime routine with your children. And after a few years of doing that, there comes a point at which one asks, what is wrong with these people? Because
we don't know what you're talking about, Greg. We have never experienced that.
Because on your fifth time, on a single evening of asking a child to clean their teeth, and they say to you, but you didn't tell me to clean my teeth. And you think, I want to rewind the world so you can hear all the times I said it. But beyond even that, you say, why would I have to remind you? We've done it 2,000 times. Literally 2,000 times. We've done this every single morning and night. So how could you not know that would be part of the routine right now? Of course, it's to do with incentive misalignment, right? They don't want to go to bed. They don't want to do this. They want to do something else.
Right.
But this is the thing. That's forced execution. It's an important thing, but you're doing it in a forced way. And it takes massive energy when you have at least amounts of it in the evening. You've had decision fatigue all day long. This is the worst moment. And that's one way to do it. The essentialist way to do it is now what we're doing. We wish we'd done it years ago. And it's this program, and here's how the program works. There is a point system chart, and every time a child does one of the things that they're expected to do, they get a point. When they get 150 points, they go on a date with mom or dad to go to something they've identified. So they're definitely motivated now to do this and get their 150 points. But that's good. Now your alignment is in the same place. You want the same things. But the system, and I say I didn't build it, it's a music-based system, so that the person, like, it's all pre-recorded. They say, okay, now it's time to earn your points to go on a date with mom and dad. The first thing you do is clean your teeth, and they have music playing and they have to clean their teeth while that music goes. And then the next thing, okay, now let's get dressed for bed. Now it's this thing. Now it's an act of kindness, which is just your chore, really, but it's kind of a cool term, act of kindness. And the whole thing goes like this. It flows through. It's a built system. That person, the people that built this tool, they did exactly what I'm describing here. They, instead of forcing it every single day, they took the same amount of energy, and instead of forcing it going forward, they used it to build a system, a routine that works, that makes it as effortless as possible. That's the goal. The goal is not to make the important things, I've got to force my way in, I've got to make it happen. It is to use your energy and limited resource of discipline in a different way. You're using it to make the future easier in those important things. And that's really the third element of essentialism. And I think it's really important to emphasize it, because otherwise people just think that it's about willpower and forcing it. And we only have limited supply of willpower. So if you use it indiscriminately, then and reactively, then by 11 o'clock in the morning, you're out of discipline for the day. And then, of course, you're on social media. Of course, you're being pulled into email, because it takes far less energy to have email act upon you than it does you act upon your life. And so that's it. You got to use your limited energy and discipline to build a system that really works as effortlessly as possible.
I love it. Okay, Greg, you've been amazing. I think that the ideas you've shared here, I'm excited to implement them and go check out the Miracle Music game too. So, okay, any just final thought to leave our Learn, Do, Become community with on essentialism? If they're feeling excited and thinking, all right, I'm ready to start, where would you suggest they start? And where can they find you? Let's talk about that.
You've got to be so gentle on yourself on this journey. There is a risk that as people try to become essentialists in non-essentialist ways. So for example, an important counterfeit for essentialism is perfectionism. Oh, I just have to be perfect in doing what's important now. And they actually turn it into non-essentialism without meaning to. Essentialism isn't about being perfect. I mean, you have this whole idea, it's becoming. It is a journey. You're going to be off track 90% of the time. You are. The difference between the people who are lost who pretend they're not and the people who are lost who know they are, the difference is that they admit it quickly and come back on track faster. So you say, oh yeah, well I just wasted this, this I've just been in email land. I've let that guide me today. Well, that's all right. Look through the day. What did you get right? Write that in your journal. Write your 6 things for tomorrow and start again. Each day is a prototype for living a life that matters. It's perfect. It's a perfect design thinking increment. And you get to use each day. Sometimes you get it right. Sometimes you get it wrong. You learn from it. Do the next day. You get to do it over again.
Well, I love that analogy of being off course 90% of the time. April and I are actually flying back from a conference we were at, and in the flight, the little screen in the back of the seat would actually give you the map of where you were. And on this particular one, it was interesting showing the compass heading, and it was varying by 10 degrees, as I was watching it. And I think, corporate airliner, for example, they're almost always off course, but ultimately they get the right course and they land it because it's that continual process of evaluation and correction and improvement, getting yourself back on track.
It's exactly the point. And the non-essentialist voice inside of us is saying, no, you have to get everything perfect right now. And if you don't, it beats you up. It's a very harsh voice inside of you. And that sort of unfriendly or bad roommate voice in your head is I think is sort of breeds out of non-essentialist thinking, that you have to do it all and you have to do it perfectly. And when do you have to do it? Now. Perfect now. Not even now. In fact, you had to be perfect yesterday. And it's just that kind of thinking that is so undermining to people's efforts to actually make progress. So the way of the essentialist is not the way of the perfectionist at all. They're the very different paths. The way of the essentialist is quick learning, gentle on yourself, keep coming back. That's the sort of the final word I would leave people with.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful, Greg. I'm not sure if non-British people are allowed to say this, but brilliant. Literally, that was phenomenal. Just the words you shared, the perspectives you have, and the things that you teach both in your book and elsewhere where you speak. We just really appreciate you taking a little bit of time to share that with the people who listen in our community. And in our show notes, we'll absolutely have a link to your book so they can know where to get that, as well as a link to your gregmckeown.com, to your homepage. And if anything else you want to send to us, we'll make sure that gets updated in the show notes. But it's just been a privilege to reconnect with you and to talk with you and learn from you.
Eric, thank you. April, thank you.
Okay, so did you just love that podcast with Greg? I've listened to it 3 times, and every time I listen, I am reminded more and more how I must live an essential life. So excited to schedule my next quarterly offsite, even if it's just a few hours at the library alone. I'm excited to continue writing in my journal. I've been doing it faithfully since recording with Greg. And as I've been thinking about the main message of the podcast, it's helped me to be able to breathe more, to realize I don't have to do everything right this minute. No, yesterday. I don't have to have everything done by yesterday. It's okay to move forward at a pace that will actually work with our whole family. Remember that we have a full outline of the whole podcast at LearnDoBecome.com/episode 12. So come check it out, sign up, we'll send you the exact notes, everything that I've written down, all the best quotes and ideas, all time-stamped for you. And I hope that you will be able to share with us your thoughts. Let us know what you're doing to become more of an essentialist. This community is growing together. We're so grateful for you and hope that you have a fantastic day.